Hey, Peter.
Hey.
Surely you've heard of the concept of swinging. I know you have.
Yes.
Yeah. Have you heard of
Very familiar with it.
Very. Almost too cocky about it, actually. Have you ever heard of the concept of hinging?
Not familiar at all with that.
Well, not surprised because we just made it up. I'm Adam Manis.
And I'm Peter Martin.
And you're listening to the You'll Hear It podcast.
Oh. Music advice coming at you from down low.
Hold on, I'll
Wow,
do
how
it.
did that happen? Hey, hey, how you doing? That was okay. I'm gonna try to. Oh, if you're not on the YouTube, you missed that.
Music advice coming at you.
I had a quick. Now I'm up too high. We're having some seat adjustment issues here. We have these fancy. What do you call these kind of chairs? They're nice.
Like
they're
Aeron chairs.
Aeron.
Kind of, yeah.
They're Aeron
They're
dynamic.
office. I mean, they're office.
They're
chairs.
office chairs.
That's what they are.
Yeah, but right before we started that, this just shows how professional we are. We didn't miss a beat. We missed a couple beats, but
Yeah.
you know, I went plopping down in my chair, but it's all good. Good to see you here.
Good to see
Mr.
you
Manis.
here. Yeah.
Look, we've got the beautiful St. Louis cityscape in our background. If you are seeing us on the YouTube, you can see
That's
that.
all of it. That's all the
Yeah.
cityscape. If you are seeing us on the YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button. We
That's right.
we appreciate your support. We're trying to grow this channel, this little channel we got. We got a big podcast, little YouTube channel. So we're trying to.
That's right. And we're going to tell you a little bit later about the gentleman's agreement, but I won't barrage our listeners with
We may
that
even
yet.
read a review later on.
Right.
Yeah.
But first, I want to know about this because I know what a hinge is, and like this is a hinge, right? But I don't understand the concept. It's not that I don't understand it. I don't know what the hell it is.
Well, so the title
What
of
the
this
hell is
episode.
hinging?
The title of this episode is "Stop Using Scales."
No, I will not stop using them. I love scale.
No, but what I really mean is something that we've been talking a lot about at Open Studio Pro, and I'm actually working on a new course called Hearing Great Harmony, Peter. What do you know about that? We're going to be talking about that a little bit later.
Pro, look at that.
Yeah.
Pro. Sorry.
And so
I'm
we've
back.
been going over this concept, and it really, it stems out of a lot of Barry Harris material, but also there's this great string arranger named Russell Garcia, who did a lot of amazing string arrangements for people like Margaret Whiting and Frank Sinatra and others. But he wrote a book called I believe it's called The Contemporary Composer and Arranger. It's really just like a dance band arranging book, which is kind of amazing.
Yeah.
But he has this concept. He doesn't call it hinging, but it's chord based. And I know a lot of people from like music educators from his generation talked about this. Like we got, and this is actually could be a broader conversation and maybe not for this episode, but I would love to talk to you about, because there is this delineation between like the bebop musicians and how they think about music and theory and how to go about it, and like Herbie Hancock. Right.
Yeah.
And the people who are more modal or scale oriented or whatever. But building your chords with this way, I find to be very liberating. And this is what we're calling in Open Studio Pro sort of the hinge way of doing it.
Yeah.
Not cringe way, the hinge way.
No. So, well, why don't you tell me what it is? then I can join in on the discussion.
I'm super confused.
Well, no, I'm just super ignorant.
So often you might think about, I mean, there still is like a scale involved, but it really is more about diatonic. It's about the key more than it's about the scale. So if we're in the key of C major, right, we know that we can build chords up by skipping a note, right?
Yeah.
And you often think of
jazz arpeggio.
a jazz arpeggio is what you call it. But oftentimes we're taught that we use that little thing. So oftentimes we're taught that we can add extensions to these chords in jazz.
I know where you're
Right,
going.
keep going, right?
Yeah.
So the hinge concept and sort of Russell Garcia's concept is more based off of seventh chords. You stick with 1, 3, 5, 7, right? These notes are sort of core to this concept in that and this is kind of where we've landed on our own working through this in Open Studio Pro, and it's a really fun exercise. It's not like the only way, but I've found this, especially with like things like constructing voicings and arrangements, can be a very freeing way to think about how harmony moves. It's going to get you to a similar thing of even like Fred Hirsch or Bach or that kind of voicing. But you start with this 4-part 1, 3, 5, 7 harmony. Each one of these tones, the 1, the 3, the 5, and the 7, it needs to be represented even as you change them. So the first thing you could do is say hinge your root up to the 9. Right? 1, 3, 5, 7 is represented. We've got the 3 is natural, the 5 is natural, and the 7 is natural. The root is represented, but it's hinged up to the 9. In other words, you're not adding the 9. You're hinging the root up to the 9, right? And you could do the same thing with the 5, right? We could do, say, up to the 13 or the 6, right? You can go down a half step to the sharp 11, right? Or the flat 5. Thinking about this, though, what it does, if you think about this as, so even if this is at a sharp 11, right? Your G is down to an F sharp. It's representing, it's an avatar of the 5. You're still 1, 3, 5. Like you should be able to go through with this concept any 4-note voicing. By the way, the bass note is a separate issue. The bass note is its own thing. So it's just the root, it's in the bass. This is the 4-part harmony, right?
Yeah.
So this 5 is represented in the sharp 11. What this does...
Should we be calling it a flat 5?
I would call it a flat 5 then, right?
Okay.
What this does is it adds a direction and a sort of function to these extensions other than just like we're adding thickness and layers to this. Because now this flat 5, it wants to go somewhere.
Yeah.
This 6 or 13 can move back to its home, right? This is especially salient in dominant chords. If we go to G7, right? So here's our G7 chord, right? I've got my bass, right? The G, and that could be any note of the triad or even the 7th. We've got the G here, and we've got our 4-part harmony. I'm going to put the root on top. So I've got B, D, F, and G, right? The 3rd, the 5, the 7, and the root. And again, we can hinge any of these, really. And dominant chords are the most malleable, as we know, of any kind of theory, right? But in the hinge theory, where everything is represented 1, 3, 5, 7, you can just move them around. The dominant chord is sort of endless in how this works. So the root, which I have here on top of my voicing, of course we can hinge it up to the 9, like we did with the major 7. But of course the root can hinge to the sharp 9, to the flat 9. And then when you realize this, you can say like, okay, as long as the root is represented in the harmony, I can move this all around. You hear, this is like how Russell Garcia, who's an arranger, is like thinking about this stuff. And you hear it in these great old string arrangements, right? It's not just a flat 9 based off of the diminished scale, right? It has a function, has a weight, a gravity. It goes somewhere, right? So thinking about the harmony as hinging up and down off of these core 1, 3, 5, 7s, and then using chromaticism and voice leading to get it somewhere is a lot different than saying, okay, I have half step, whole step, half step, whole step, and I have this, and this is part of it, and I can move it around. That's cool, and that has its way, but this is a different way to think about it, and check it out. So that's just the root that's hinging. On a dominant chord, the 5 can, of course, again, hinge down to the sharp 11 or the flat 5. You got the flat 13, you got the 13. The 3rd can hinge up a little sus, right? So everything is kind of, and you have all of this. The only thing that on the dominant chord that doesn't really hinge is the dominant 7. You could do a major, but it kind of gets a little not dominant sounding, right? But everything else in various combinations, and now you have all this like this amazing things that can weave in and out. You have all this voice leading, and the only rule is no matter what 4-note voicing, and this of course can be open or closed or whatever, I'm doing just basic closed, it has to represent 1, 3, 5, or 7, right? So you have to have each of those 4 core 1, 3, 5, 7,
and nothing above that,
and nothing. Well, I mean, until you hinge.
That.
Like the root can hinge to the 9, and of course, you know, you can have the 13 in there as the 5 hinges up to that,
but only as alterations of those.
You're not
1, 3, 5, or 7.
You're not adding. It's not additive where you're doing the traditional up there, right? You're just thinking of this as that 9 is representing the root in the chord.
I love it. So it's a little bit of a restrictive framework.
It's a restrictive framework
for chord alteration.
And it gets you to this place of, that, like I said, is very similar. I don't think, you know, Barry Harris was thinking like this, but it gets you a very similar place to that. And I think it's actually closer to sort of the bebop style of thinking about this than like
scale running
or building your chords based off of like Phrygian, and then we're going to build all this stuff, and now we can add extensions to the top and whatever, and you can, and pretty much anything goes, and we add. This is like very restrictive. It as if you do this as sort of an exercise, even if you just like do what I'm doing here, where you go through changes, right? And you put just the bass note in the left hand, and that's its own separate thing. And you go through a tune, like if you just go through a blues and you do this, you you get all this beautiful voice leading that you don't even realize is available to you if you're thinking about a scale. Because like if I'm thinking about going from 13 to flat 13 on a dominant chord, I'm thinking about, well, I got to change what's the scale that's appropriate, that's associated with it. This takes that all away. It doesn't matter. There's no scale associated with it. It's just 1, 3, 5, 7.
Yeah.
And you're hinging up and down. And as long as everything's represented, you're good.
I love it. I kind of understand it. I think that was a great description, and just I understand the concept. That's what's important. I think folks, when they learn new theory or a new word that describes a musical concept, there's the theoretical aspect of it. There's the application of it, which of course is sort of the most important thing, because that's going to be the closest to the manifestation of the music that we hear. And what's immediately coming to me with this is like, even though you're saying it's 1, 3, 5, 7, so like B flat major.
Yeah.
So but even if you're over like a C7, because you were saying how like the root doesn't really matter.
Yeah. Exactly.
Where you kind of float that on top, how you can still get into those upper extensions
all of
in a
those
different kind of
hinge,
way.
or up to here, like everything has, as long as it's represented, that 1, 3, 5, 7 is represented, anything's fair game, and you can use your ear, and there doesn't have to be a scale that's involved in it.
Yeah.
It's like whatever is working with that combination of 4 notes works.
And it's great too, because it gives you the ability, like I always feel like when I've always been a little bit adverse to thinking too deeply about upper extensions, 9ths, 11ths, sharp 11, 13, flat, anything above the octave as always above the octave, because the actual application for improvising doesn't lend itself always to that. So I love this concept. So in other words, if I'm on like C7, that's not like scale based, but it is based upon
This sort of,
these little alterations that are not just
it's not based, it's like
where you're going up into the upper extension,
Yeah.
and then you start to alter them.
well, even something as basic as like, right, has this concept is sort of part of that idea.
Yeah.
Or something like,
and you can use the Indian version on this is cool for the 1, 3, 5,
you could
7.
use open voicings.
Yeah.
In fact, using open voicings in like a drop 2 is enlightening, right? So if you have, right, so I have this little 5-note thing here. It's a C7 to an F major, right?
Yeah.
And the opening C is C, and again, the root, the bass note, and I don't call it the root, the bass note is separate. It's its own thing. So the bass note, it could be any of those things. It's up to kind of the bass player or the very bottom of your right hand. So the bass note is C. Then I have B flat, E, A, and D, right? And you're thinking, well, Adam, where's root 3, 5, 7 in those 4 notes? Well, root is this D.
Yeah.
D is the root hinged up. The A is the 5, right?
Yep.
And now I can work any of these as I work my way back to F7. And I can work the F7, I can hinge. And there's no scale. There's not like I'm going now to like a, with this. So here I have the A is now an A flat or G sharp, right? So I don't have to think, oh, is that whole tone? Like, no, this is what it is. And any of these melodically work, and it actually kind of works melodically too.
Yeah.
You can think about this melodically.
I was thinking Bill Evans, Shirley Horn. She definitely understood
yeah, I mean, you
this
hear
concept.
this, Hank Jones, you hear this in a
inner
lot of
voice
players.
movement. Yeah.
Even if they're not thinking of this, it's kind of a fun way to get that sound. It's like a counterpoint exercise almost, where it's like it's going to get you to sound like Haydn.
Right.
Like this kind of gets you to sound like some of those great arrangers and pianists who were also great arrangers.
It's a little bit of a restricted, concept. It's a kind of a cheat code to getting you to be able to hear some things that are simple but like important, kind of melodic, almost like backing yourself into the corner in some really cool ways.
Yeah.
I just was working on a video that's gonna hopefully come out soon about.
Overjoyed, yeah.
And I'm thinking now this concept kind of, because this actually is probably not going to make it into the video because I ended up talking about pentatonics is what it's going to be about, which was fun. But the idea is like, how do you not play this like a jazz musician where it's like.
Yeah. Just filling it up with extensions and stuff.
And it's like, it's major, but the thing is the melody is right on the 1, so it's always like what are we going to do, like a major 6/9? But we don't necessarily just want to be triad either.
Yeah.
And if you see the things like, and Stevie was real slick the way he'd move in and out of these things, what you can hear on the recording and hear him do live. But I came up with some different ideas where you can add a jazz sensibility in terms of, because the material has a very well, I don't need to go into it here, but I'll say just for the hinging thing that was kind of a light bulb moment with you explaining this is like these kind of voicings. This is actually root 1, 3, 5, 7, but then I'm hinging down the 3rd to the 9th.
Say it again. It's root.
So so it's actually the 7th on the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then I'm hinging the 3rd down to the 9th. Is that considered hinging?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then I might double down like the 3rd there. But the idea is that, you know, like how do you make something that sounds, and that's kind of a hinge thing over B flat too, without like just widening it out, you know, which we know we can do, but that sort of forces into a different kind of sound that we might not want.
Yeah, this would be like a 5-note hinge voice thing with the melody on top.
Right.
Yeah, exactly, man. It's a really fun sort of game you can play.
Because that root 3, 5, 7 on the bottom, that's a sound, but then that's a very different sound, right? Where you're just putting that F instead of the G.
Yeah, absolutely. And that would be, technically that's like a sus2, right?
Mm-hmm.
But again, what
sus2.
scale is that? It's just a key of E flat. That's what we're thinking of here. And it's with, all of this. Even like if you're on a B flat 7, like this, right? This is a hinged B flat dominant chord, right? Where here's our 7. So this is A flat, C, E flat, and G, right? So like B flat 7 sus. But this is just this, where we're hinging the root up to the 9, the 3rd up to the 4, and the 5 up to the, right?
Yeah.
It's all represented right there. It's all represented in that. Yeah. And what's cool about that then is like, that's where all this comes from, all of this can move as part of it,
Yeah.
So it's much simpler than something that can be a little bit more elaborate, like some of Barry's concepts. But I love it. And check out,
are all inversions are legal on this?
All inversions, open, closed, all legal. Check out Russell Garcia's. I think it's the contemporary arranger and composer. It's from the 50s or 60s.
Well,
so
hold up now.
It's got some dated stuff, and it has this. And shout out to our Open Studio Pro member John W, who came up with the term hinging. We were talking about what is this, and he's like, "Oh, those notes are hinging up and down."
Interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
so I was gonna say, you can check that out, but also check out Adam Madison Open Studio Pro if you're into these kinds of like what I would consider this is a very nerdy theoretical concept that has great applications though.
It has
like,
really practical, simple applications for sure.
Yeah, and
it's
that
fun.
leads us into interesting places and explanations of things that you can be like, oh wow.
Yeah,
I can hear. Shirley Horn was hinging all over the place. Now that I understand it,
and be on the lookout too. This is part of my new course, Hearing Great Harmony, that I'm currently recording and should be out in a few
available
weeks.
to all Open Studio members.
Yeah, it's going to be
go to openstudiojazz.com. You know what I'm saying?
Hey,
if you're into this kind of
thing. If we're gonna shell for ourselves here, why don't you read some ratings and reviews, man?
Well, for sure. But I'm just saying, like, if you made it, first of all, thank you for making it this far into the podcast. But if you like this kind of stuff,
they're riveted,
and you have time, if you want, and look, this is the way we're doing things. It's very simple over at Open Studio. I don't know if you know that now. We have 2 different courses of action.
Yeah,
calls to action. You can become an Open Studio member.
That's right. Very popular.
Or you can become an Open Studio Pro member.
Also popular.
And really the main difference is the live element, the community element. You're part of the community when you come in.
And the price.
Yeah, and the price is a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, like, if you've got the time and the inclination to really want to move quickly with, like, a community that you'll get to know with live sessions with such... Yeah. I mean, I know this sounds crazy. You will actually have some live access via Zoom to none other than Adam Madison.
Well, and Peter Martin.
And to Peter Martin. And Chris Parks.
And Jeffrey Keyser.
And Jeremy Suskind.
Jeremy Siskin. One of the great YouTube piano
Jeffrey Keyser. Ruben Rogers.
Yeah. Like John O'Leary, who's a new teacher, has become very popular.
So if you want to go pro, or you can just come in as a regular Open Studio member, dabble your feet, as they would say.
Yeah, Open Studio membership is about the information, and the Open Studio Pro is the information plus the community and the feedback.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For the cost of one latte per week. And if you're rich, you can do both. All right, ratings and reviews. Here we go. We have 2 new reviews. Thank you guys, because I know, like, leaving a review on Apple Podcasts is kind of a pain in the ass.
I'm not a fan of
leaving reviews. No, I am a fan of you leaving us reviews, but
so
we
appreciate it. I don't want to say it's a pain in the ass so that you don't go do it. Figure it out. Come on, you can do it. Gentlemen's agreement. We're going to provide you...
gentleman's agreement crap again.
No, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you shake on something.
Are we going to duel at the end of this episode?
Exactly. If people don't leave us ratings reviews, we may. But the idea is that we give you this podcast. Look, you just learned about
There was a gentleman's agreement, sir.
Yeah, why you got to be Irish? Scottish. Big shout out to my Scottish family in Edinburgh.
I thought I was just being fancy. I didn't.
You were being very fancy. So no, the idea is that we provide you with this amazing podcast for free. There's no charge. There's no gain.
They know they're already in. They're
Why
already listening.
Why do you bristle when I say
Because you're
this?
just adding complexity.
Why does this chafe you?
We make it. They listen. They leave us a review. That's all.
That's the agreement. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
That's what.
Well, why
so
bring
what do we-
formality
why are you
into it? Did they
chafing?
need to sign a contract? What's going
Well,
on?
this is a gentleman's agreement. No, in that you know what
Do
it
they
is?
have to be gentlemen? Are you
Let me explain it to
being-
Let me explain it to you.
Oh, man.
It's like the PBS pledge drive. You don't have to.
because that's what we want this show to be.
We are the PBS of jazz podcasts, of music podcast. No, the idea is that we are going to provide this. It's not like we're waiting for them to give us the rating review and then we're going to provide it. We're providing it in advance. That's the gentlemanly part. We're opening the door for you.
That's true.
All we ask for in it's not even an even exchange. All they got to go. It takes like 30 seconds to do this.
I mean,
this
they
takes
also
us
got to sit
hours.
through this kind of crap too.
Anyway, leave us a rating review and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's it.
All right, check out our open studio swag here, kid. Look at that. Look.
Let's see exactly.
Studio.
Okay,
See how
here's the
good.
first one.
Okay, go ahead.
Motivational, 5 stars. Keeps me motivated and engaged in the jazz community. I always want to practice after listening.
Word.
Thank you to Tan Man Plan Stan from the United States of America. And then our second rating review, learning the language, 5 stars. If you want to learn a language, go live. Go live where they speak it and immerse yourself.
So this guy is so into going live. He loves going live.
We go live every day.
We go live
according to
every
you.
day. Gotta put the bell on.
If you want to learn a language, go live where they speak it. And you know what? I want to go learn English. I want to go to America where they speak it and I can learn it because I can't read it. If you want to learn a language, go live where they speak it and immerse yourself. This is the place to learn the language of music and jazz. Adam and Peter talk in music, and for once, I'm starting to get it. This is the best podcast I've found in a long time. Thanks for doing this, guys. Thank you, Rich Grimshaw from the United States of America. That's saying a lot, talking about us like that. We're public school kids, right?
Yeah.
We're not...
Obviously.
You know, we're barely graduates, some of us. Anyway, thank you guys for being here. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, producer Caleb. Thank you to the listeners. Until next time, hinge it.
You'll hear it.
I'm in Steamboat Springs, Colorado currently.
I'm in Indianapolis.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Andrew, hi.
Because I feel inspired to play something else from your playing.
Okay, that's great.
I think using the metronome is a great tool, but it's not the only tool.
All of the answers are really in the music.
What does it mean to live in a groove, be in a groove?
Until next time, happy practicing.